Hello hobby farmers, Bevan Cohen here from Small House Farm, and today I'm going to show you 10 different things that you can do to get your hobby farm or garden ready for winter. As the seasons change, that cold weather starts to come in, temperatures are going to start dipping below freezing, which is going to give us a frost and eventually a hard freeze. So there's a number of different things that we need to do to get our homesteads, gardens, and hobby farms ready for this cold weather. We're going to want to clean up our garden beds and get them ready for winter first. So if you've got any garden structures, like you can see my tomato trellises, if you've got bean poles, that sort of thing, we're going to want to disassemble these, take them apart, get them cleaned up. So we're just going to want to cut these strings, pull out these T-posts and pull, and cut and remove the plants. Some plants like tomatoes, a lot of your solanaceae, your nightshade plants, I say just remove them right from the garden altogether. We don't want to necessarily put them in the compost because these plants could transfer diseases into next year's garden. So I like to take all my old tomato plants and things over onto the fire pit and burn them right up. That way we don't have to worry about it. Then we're going to go ahead. I just like to mow the garden right down. All these plants, you can see they've been hit by frost already. They're pretty much done for here. I want to leave the roots in the soil. That's going to help cut down on erosion and that sort of thing. You could certainly plant a cover crop in here, a green manure. You could plant some vetch or winter wheat or something like that, and that's going to not only again have roots in the soil to help hold that dirt in place, but it's also going to break down next year and add some nutrients to the soil. Conversely though, we could also, when we're cleaning up after our animals and we've got all that manure, we can bring that right over here, spread it out on their gardens. I like to spread it out before the snow hits, and that way it's got plenty of time to settle in, especially things like chicken manure. You know, that stuff's really hot. Too much nitrogen, it's got to have time to break down before next year's garden. So get that out here right now, get that spread out. It's going to have a lot of nutrients to our soil, really help next year's garden thrive. Now, we're going to want to bring more of our frost-sensitive plants indoors if we can, right? So this is going to be any of our tropical plants, things like rosemary, aloe, stuff that we can have outside in the sun. If they're in pots, we're going to want to bring them inside. If they're in the garden, we can go ahead and dig them up, bring them indoors. That way we can enjoy them all winter long. And these plants are not frost tolerant at all. They are not going to survive the winter. So if we want to keep them to enjoy them, we're going to have to dig them up and bring them inside. You know, some of the things that we grow like peppers are actually perennial plants in their native habitats. Here where we live, we grow them as annuals because they can't survive the winter, but being perennials, we can actually dig these pepper plants up, pot them up real nice in a nice potting soil, and bring them inside and enjoy peppers all winter long. Now, even some plants that we grow that are actually more frost tolerant, like this lemon balm right here, this would be perfectly fine out in the garden if it was in the soil. Since it's in a container, it's not going to be able to handle a hard freeze at all. So we can bring it indoors to enjoy it this way, or we can put it in a garage or a shed or someplace like that. All right, well, I better get my plants inside. It's getting cold. We're going to want to get out into the gardens and get all the last produce that we can. This is our last harvest right here, right folks? So, you know, when that cold weather hits, when it begins to freeze, the water inside of these fruits actually expands. It's going to break that cell wall, and this stuff is going to go bad real quick. So we got to get it indoors before that happens. So we got to get out, harvest all the things that we can. Every little bit of fruit and vegetable that we can find in that garden, we want to scoop it up and get it inside. Now, some of our crops are a little more cold tolerant. Things like cabbage, kale, some of our radishes, those things, they're going to be perfectly fine. But these more tropical plants, our tomatoes and our peppers, things like that, we have got to get them harvested and bring them inside. Just like our veggies, we need to get out there and harvest our herbs before that cold weather hits. Now, a few of our herbs may be a little bit more cold tolerant, like this horehound right here, but a number of the herbs that we enjoy certainly are not. Think about basil. Basil can't tolerate cold weather at all. So before that first frost comes, we got to go harvest all the basil in our gardens. You'll see when it gets too cold, the basil will start to turn black. It'll wither up and it'll die right away. So we got to get out there, harvest those herbs, dry them, process them, and then we'll be able to enjoy them all winter long. While we're out in the gardens gathering our last of our produce and our herbs and that sort of thing, we also want to consider it's seed saving time as well. It's critical that we get the last of the seeds in before the frost hits. Just like with the produce, the seeds can't tolerate those freezing cold temperatures. So we got to gather them up and we got to bring them inside before it's too late. On these flowers and such, we'll know that the seeds are mature and ready because the flowers themselves, the petals have all died back. It started to brown and dry up. This is how the plant signals that the seeds are mature and that they're ready to be harvested. Fall is also a wonderful time to still do some planting. There's a number of different crops that we can plant this time of year that they need to be overwintered anyways. Things like garlic, winter wheat, many of our flower bulbs, even our fruit trees are all going to benefit from being planted right now to be harvested next year. If you're growing garlic at your hobby farm, you're going to want to make sure that you mulch it after you get it planted. That's going to help protect the baby plants throughout the winter. Sometimes the sprouts of the garlic are going to come up out of the soil before winter hits, and a little bit of mulch is going to help protect those baby plants just to ensure their survival until next year. We also have to consider heating our homes, right? Whether that be wood. If we're heating with wood, we got to start splitting our wood and getting it ready. If you got lots of time and energy, you can certainly split your wood by hand. Get a hydraulic wood splitter. It's going to save you a lot of time. If you heat with propane though, this is the time that we want to check our tanks, see what our level's at, see if we're going to need to get a refill. Now, the nice thing about heating with firewood is it warms you twice. Once when you split it and haul it, and then the second time when you burn it. We're going to want to go through our gardens as well as our yards and clean up anything out there that we don't want out under the snow, right? So we're definitely going to want to collect all of our tools. This is a great time for garden tool maintenance. So we're going to go through, pick up any rakes, hoes, shovels, anything that's kind of just been left out and about. And you never know what you're going to find when you're out cleaning the yard. Probably going to have to clean up some of the kids' toys as well. And I'm sure that they'll appreciate that. And maybe you could have the kids come out and help you clean up the farm too. While we're out cleaning up the yard and the garden, the greenhouses, the sheds, that sort of thing, we want to make sure we pick up any old flower pots or anything like that, get them out of the way, especially if they've got dirt or something still in them, because the dirt's going to expand when it freezes, it's going to crack those flower pots, they're going to get ruined. We also want to make sure that we take care of any hoses that we have lying around, disconnect them from the house, take the attachments off the end of them, get those cleaned up as well. We do not want those freezing while they're still attached to the house. We're also going to want to drain the water out of our rain barrel, folks. Same thought process, right? When this water expands, it's going to crack this plastic, and we cannot let that happen. So we just got to open them up, get that water out of there. Real easy chore. We also want to make sure that we take good care of our animals. Whether you got chickens or pigs or horses or whatever it might be, they're going to need some extra care come wintertime as well. Adding some extra straw to their house throughout the wintertime is going to help keep them warm. Some folks like to use a heat lamp in their chicken coop to help keep their chickens warm. We've never bothered with that here in Michigan, and we haven't had a problem with it at all. The chickens seem to be just fine in there. We also want to make sure that the animal's water doesn't freeze. So we got to find some way to keep that water warm enough that it doesn't freeze no matter how cold it's going to get during the wintertime. Here at Small House Farm, we just use a simple heating element just like this. We can run an extension cord out to the chicken coop, plug this guy in, drop it right into their water. We just use a small stock tank to hold the chicken water in, and this works just fine to keep that water thawed out all winter long. Even after winter hits and the gardens are covered in snow, there's still work that can be done. Planning next year's garden, and this is my favorite of all the garden chores really, because then this is the time that we get to dream, right? Flipping through seed catalogs, just thinking about all the gardens to come. But at the end of the year, right now, is the best time to be planning next year's garden, because all the memories are fresh in our mind. What worked this year? What didn't work this year? What would we like to do different? How would we like to expand our gardens, you know? While the memories are fresh, this is the best time to be planning for the future. So get out a pen and paper, make some notes, make a list, even diagram, draw it out. Draw what you'd like to see happen in next year's garden, right? Take all of your experiences and everything that you've learned this year to help next year's garden be even better.